morning, St. Matthews.
Good morning.
And I am Eunice Day. Okay. It is an honor to share with you a few moments of one of our most noted Black leaders, Black pioneers. She is called the mother of the modern day civil rights. Her name is Rosa Parks. In researching my report to give you on Rosa Parks, I found a couple of the writers that are just so close in my heart. William Raspberry of the Washington Post, and also Leonard Pitts of the Miami Herald. They have calculated the accomplishments of Rosa Parks. William says, "That's not what Rosa Parks did for us. That's what we can do for her memory. Her feet were not tired, at least no more than usual. She always hated that legend that the reason she would not move out of her seat was because her feet were tired. No, it was her soul. She was tired of being looked at as a second-class citizen. After working 8 hours as a seamstress in a Montgomery, Alabama shop. But under the segregation Jim Crow laws, we call them, of Montgomery, Alabama, no white man was expected to suffer the indignity of sitting next to a Black woman or even across from her. So the driver, E.F. Blake, asked Rosa Parks to move from her seat. She told him no. And the custom was at that time too, Blacks paid their fare in the front of the bus to the bus driver. But then they had to walk around the back of the bus to get in their seats. So after working 8 hours that day, Rosa Parks said no. And it was embedded in her heart that she could no longer do that. This was the beginning of our desegregation of being able to be treated as first-class citizens and to ride a bus and pay the same fee that the whites pay and go home. That's what Rosa Parks is trying to do. Within that week in Montgomery, Alabama, their small chapter of the NAACP called together the leaders and they brought in someone to be nominated for president. And that was her introduction to Martin Luther King. So she got to see him firsthand, know him firsthand, and saw someone who came to be a minister at Dexter Baptist Church, not prepared necessarily to be the leader of a movement that would go nationwide, and it would allow us to be able to ride in any Greyhound Trailway bus in the United States. I'm so excited that we are a recipient of it, because I too grew up in a small town where segregation was very, very prevalent. She has won several awards, but even before that, because she went to court, she was charged $10 fine and paid a $4 fee for the violation of not listening to the bus driver for a Jim Crow law. Over 500 Blacks attended that court. This led to over 50,000 Blacks boycotting the bus line in Montgomery, Alabama, and it led to the overthrowing of that law, and it is history, past history now. And we all get to enjoy the merits of that. We all still do today. But when we ask, what can we do in her memory, there's still much that we have to do. We have to do it in our families, in our church, in our children, in our workplace. And that is be honest, be fair, give a good day's work, but don't expect something for nothing. Rosa Parks in 1995 at the Sit-In Museum, the International Sit-In Museum here in Greensboro, she was awarded the Civil Rights Award for the year. She was also given the Congressional Medal from President Clinton. And last year, the unveiling of her statue at the National Monument in Washington. So we have to give President Obama his accolades for not letting us forget who she was and what she did. I believe I could go on and on about Rosa Parks, but what I would like to say and like to end that there is so much of her that I hope we can take away in her readings in the museums. There's a museum in Detroit that she has, and her family too had to move from Montgomery, to Detroit, where she had relatives too, and that is where she died. But because of the threats against the family, I think we all saw the movies where we saw the shots go into the houses like we did with Medgar Evers, and we saw with Martin Luther King. She too suffered the turmoil and abuse from going to court and not giving up her seat. But she took on a profession that is notable, sewing clothes, putting buttons on, hemming, sitting on her, like I said, using her hands and her body all day long. And we know that laborious work sometimes can make us just get very fed up. But that we do know, and I think the verse you mentioned, Albertina, come unto me, all ye that are heavy burdened, heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. She was a Christian first. And I think she handled it so tactfully. She did not have to use any profanity or anything when she was told to get up. And when the policeman, I think in the movie that I saw, it did show that the policeman that arrested Rosa Parks, he did not handcuff her. He let her walk dignified off the bus to the jail, and she got bail that night. And like I said, over 50,000 people marched in Montgomery, Alabama, to make sure that the bus lines would no longer say, you can't sit next to us, you can't sit close to us. Because we showed them that skin color has nothing to do with it.
other day, my grandson Matt turned 25, and we were laughing about it. I said, boy, you know you are a quarter of a century old. And he said, Grandma, what did you do when you turned 25? I said, son, you don't want to know. No, not like that. I was in a panic because I thought at 25, everything that was up would fall. Everything that was in would be out. And I just went into a panic. A quarter of a century. You know, in only 75 years, I'd be 100. So we talked about it and we looked at some photographs. And he was looking at a photograph of my great-grandmother, Mama May. And he said, Grandma, don't you have a dress like this? And I go, yeah, I do. You see, my brothers and sisters, things go in and out of style. If you just hold on to it long enough, put it in your back of your closet, it's going to come back in style. Now, whether you can get in it or not is a different question. But things come and go all the time. Shoes, fashions, hairstyles, they all come and go. And then one day, I don't know who did it, somebody decided that they would make a cross. I don't know if it was made out of 2 nails soldered together and a rope tied around it or a noose put on it so that somebody could wear it on their neck. And the next thing you know, everybody is wearing a cross. Some of the crosses have a depiction of Christ on the cross, but we know he's not there anymore, amen? But we wear crosses. We have them in gold and platinum and silver and diamonds and all kinds of gemstones. And we wear our cross. But then if we look at Mark's gospel, listen to this. And if you have a cross on, I just want you to touch it. Just finger your cross as we read these words from the 8th chapter of Mark's gospel. Then he began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He said all this quite openly, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes into the glory of his Father with the Holy Spirit. Cross-bearing or cross-wearing, there is a difference. You see, Jesus was trying to get the disciples and those within his hearing to understand that following him would be an arduous task. Following him would cause suffering and danger and perhaps even bodily harm. Following Jesus would not be something easy for us to do. Following Jesus would not just be a spur of the moment thing, oh yeah, I'll go. It required deep thought and prayer and consecration and concentration. Am I going to follow Jesus? What is this going to cost me? It may cost me my life. But Jesus has already said that if we try to save our lives, we're going to lose it. But if we lose our lives for His sake, we'll save them. Doesn't that sound like an oxymoron? Doesn't that sound like a contradiction? But we walk by faith and not by sight. And if Jesus says that if we follow Him and lose our life, we will save it, then it is so. You know, I'm reminded of a story of a young preacher, Reverend Curry, Reverend Jones, who came to a church. And there were some older women as communion stewards. I just pointed that way. I'm not saying y'all old. Because I got to get out of here and ain't the 3 doors. And this little young preacher hadn't been seasoned, just decided that because he was the preacher, he was going to change some things around. And so he called the ladies into his office and he said, you know, mothers, I've been thinking, you all are mature in years, and I think it's time that you sit down. You've been pouring the juice in those little cups for years. You've been taking those little cups home and carefully washing them and drying them and putting them back in a basket and bringing them, and you've been washing and ironing the altar cloth. I think it's time for y'all to sit down. Let some younger folk do this. One old sister crossed her arm and started going from side to side. Didn't nobody say anything. And again, the Reverend reiterated, yes, I think you all are, well, to be honest, you all are too old for this job. And we need some young folk in the church to do this job. The little sister started patting her foot. And the others joined her. She was just rocking with her arms folded. And this little young preacher couldn't understand, why don't they say something? What's going on? And finally he says, ladies, do you have anything to say? And the old mother said, there is a fountain filled with blood, drawn from Emmanuel's vein, and sinners plunge beneath that flood, lose all their guilty stain. And the other one stood up and said, must Jesus bear the cross alone and all the world go free? No, there's a cross for everyone, and there's a cross for me. The young preacher realized then he was in real deep, and it was time for him to back out. And he says, ladies, I understand what you're saying. I missed it the first time. I think you're doing an excellent job. You may go now. You see, when we bear the cross, sometimes there may be those who want to see us get out the way. When we bear the cross, there may be those who criticize us for what we do or how we do it. When we bear the cross, there may be some who would have absolutely nothing to do with us. But the songwriter said, must all the world go free? No, there's a cross for me. So then, I ask that you turn to